Perfect. Hello, everybody. And thank you so very much for joining us today on the 50th anniversary of Earth Day for this live webinar, Pouring with Purpose. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Stephanie Jordan. I'm the founder of Drinking Out Loud, which is a wine and spirits marketing consultancy agency based here in Amsterdam, but also co-founder of Avallen Spirits. And so on behalf of Avallen, Tim, and the rest of our panelists today, we'd just like to really thank you again for taking the time to connect on this, what we hope to be a really inspiring session. For those of you that don't know Avallen, it's a spirits brand which we created with environmental positivity at its absolute core. We believe that it's vital that we need to be positive in everything that we do, and that starts with our raw material, our natural liquid, our low impact packaging, and our marketing culture, and also via initiatives such as these. So leading the conversation for the future of the drinks industry and helping us as a collective better understand what we can do to reduce our footprint on our absolutely beautiful planet. Now, as I said at the beginning, today marks the 50th anniversary of Earth Day, which is considered to be the first modern environmental movement inspiring millions to take action to protect our environment. Now, to paraphrase the International Earth Day Organization, and this is where it's going to get a little bit intense, climate change represents the biggest challenge to the future of humanity and the life support systems that make our world habitable. Unless every country, company, citizen in the world steps up with urgency and ambition, we are consigning current and future generations to a dangerous future. Therefore, Earth Day 2020 needs to be far more than just a day. It must be a historic moment where citizens of the world rise up in a united call for creativity, innovation, ambition, and bravery that we need to meet our climate crisis and seize the enormous opportunity for a zero carbon future. Now, today, Earth Day is expected to educate and mobilize more than 1 billion people in 193 countries to grow and support the next generation of environmental activists. And given the current global context, this will mainly be done online, such as events like these. Now, without further ado, it is my great pleasure to introduce you to our amazing guest speakers today. So first of all, Sara Duncan. Sara, if you can wave. Wonderful Sara Duncan is the author of the ethical business book, 50 Ways Which You Can Help Protect People, Planet, and Profits. She now also provides consultancy and workshops on ethical and responsible corporate behavior. Tim and I have read her book back to back, and it's been a key foundation to building Avallen's the right way from the get-go. We've also got the fantastic Jarvis Smith. Bonjour, Jarvis. Founder of My Green Pod, the UK's leading independent ethical lifestyle website and magazine. Now, Jarvis made a life-changing commitment to millions on Channel's 4 eco-observational documentary Dumped, that he would focus his life's work on inspiring the masses to live more consciously. We're really proud that Avallen is a hero product with My Green Pod, and we love working alongside Jarvis to better connect to that conscientious consumer of today. Then we have Sara Vashon, a really good friend of Tim and ours, and also marketing director at Provenance. Now, as the marketing lead for Provenance, Sara's works with brands and organizations around transparency, sustainability, and positive impact. Sara has extensive experience in marketing and strategy in the drinks and hospitality industry and has been a vital support with Avallen's marketing culture since our very inception. And then we have the lovely James Fowler. Hello, James, with your wonderful birds. Now, James is from many places. He has been in the hospitality industry for 18 years. He's now opened his third venue, Terroir Tapas, which has a strong focus on local ingredients and zero waste. He's also an ambassador for Action Against Hunger. Terroir Tapas was one of the first UK venues to list Avallen when we launched last year on World Bee Day. So it's really fantastic to be able to connect and engage with James on this webinar. And last but not least, the multifaceted, multi-talented Mr. Etherington Judge. So Tim is the founder of Healthy Hospo, a platform for a happier, healthier hospitality industry, and also co-founder of Avallen. He's an all-round health and wellness guru, eco-warrior, and as I like to call him, the #1 worker bee. Right, now the introductions are done. You should all be able to see the schedule on your screens. Now, this is the rollout of the next 90 minutes, during which we will cover a host of topics, including restorative business practices, changing consumer trends, the future of ingredients, and creativity in the drinks industry, and I'm sure many more things. Tim, who has upskilled himself to Zoom master levels during lockdown, will be sending you some live polling during the various speakers' sessions. So please do interact with them as soon as they pop up on your screen so that we can immediately share the results. And once all our panelists have finished talking, we will then open up for an interactive Q&A. So at the base of your screens, you'll be able to do this through the Q&A button. So yes, we hope that you come away from this webinar feeling positively empowered with a better understanding for the future of our drinks industry. Now it's over to our first speaker, Sara Duncan.
Fantastic. Thanks, Steph and Tim, and thanks for inviting me along to the chit chat today on Earth Day. So I'm gonna kick off with what I think is probably one of the most startling stats that I've seen of late, and that is that we currently need the equivalent of 1.7 planets to provide the resources necessary to produce the goods and absorb the waste of the stuff we humans use. That comes from a report in 2018 from the Global Footprint Network. And they project that by 2030, we're going to need 2 planets to support all the resources that we're using, which is pretty startling stuff, I think. And it sort of is summed up brilliantly in a TED talk by a guy called Paul Gilding, called "The Earth is Full." And he very astutely points out that infinite growth on a planet with finite resources is clearly unsustainable. And that's before you even get into the whole kind of climate change and the effects of global warming. So, you know, we've got some major things to tackle here. So in terms of sort of the subject of my little chit chat, which is why ethical business is the only way forward, I'm going to kind of say, well, it's kind of why ethical business should be the only way forward. And it should be the only way forward because companies realise that they are depleting all these natural resources. And it should be because they recognise they're encouraging overconsumption and that they're potentially party to exploitation of people around the planet, and how that kind of contributes to the whole inequality around the planet, the haves and the have-nots, which causes so many problems today. That's kind of why ethical business should be the only way forward. But the reality, I think, is a little bit different from that. And, you know, I talk to a lot of businesses, and a lot of people are talking about sustainability and ethical practice, but it's not because they've suddenly grown a conscience overnight. It's because they are responding to very human behaviour and a shift in kind of human consciousness, if you like. And they're kind of waking up and going, wow, things are changing, and we've got to change with it, and we've got to respond to it. And there are, don't get me wrong, there are some brilliant businesses like Avallen and Steph and Tim who have built something up around a kind of personal moral crusade. And thankfully, there are a lot more CEOs now who are driving change within bigger businesses. But also there's still a lot of businesses that are just kind of playing catch up and trying to respond to it, because it's really complex. And they're trying to respond to the rise in the more conscious consumer, which obviously Jarvis is going to talk about a little bit more in a moment. They're looking to respond to the fact that people now more and more want to work for companies that stand for something more than just simply making a stack of cash. And this is particularly, the studies are showing, the millennials and Gen Zs who care about this stuff. They want to work for businesses that stand for something and that have those ethical and sustainable credentials. And so if you don't live up to that, you're potentially losing a lot of good talent. And then you've got the whole supply chain, where effectively, good businesses tend to keep good company. And so more and more people are going to be judging you as to whether or not people want to work with you. So these are all actually highly commercial elements for a company to consider. And then you've got the whole kind of other areas of looking at your energy can reduce costs, looking at how you manage waste can have lots of cost efficiencies long term. There's a whole area of kind of mitigating risk and stealing a march, if you like, on future legislation, because hopefully as governments start doing what they promised to do in the Paris Agreement, we will see more and more legislation that is encouraging or discouraging people from certain behaviours. And so you can steal a march on that. And then the more positive element, which is when you do this stuff well, you get so much better marketing, and your comms become properly engaging. And I think Sarah's going to talk a bit more about that as well. So these are really powerful kind of commercial imperatives, if you like. And so I'm just going to kind of finish off my little section with 5 things that I kind of ask businesses to consider, whether you're in the drinks industry or not. And it depends whether you might be starting out your own business, you may be running a successful business, you may be working for a company and wanting to try and maybe drive a little bit of change or influence people. So a few things to consider. My first one is I encourage you to kind of speak the language of business around this topic. Unfortunately, it maybe shouldn't be the case, but I think sometimes this comes across as a bit sort of overly worthy. And if we really want to drive change in business, we have to balance that emotional intelligence, because it's a very emotional area, with a kind of clear commercial understanding, because I think that's where we have the best opportunity to drive change. My second point is to recognise that this is not the same as the kind of old-fashioned CSR, the corporate social responsibility, where companies kind of got to the end of the year and went, okay, we've made a bit of money, so great, we can give some to charity, or we can pay the staff a bonus or give them a party. This has to be absolutely riven into the business model at the very beginning of the year. You have to say success looks like we achieve X goal for profit, but we also achieve X goal from looking after people and looking after the planet. So that the triple bottom line, as they call it, absolutely has to be just kind of art welded into the business model and non-negotiable. My third point is finding your purpose, which I think Steph and Tim have done brilliantly. It's a struggle for a lot of companies, this one. It's talked about a lot, and it's quite difficult, particularly if you've got a business that's been running for a while. So I would simplify it by just saying your purpose is something that is bigger than the products you make or the services you provide. It's that thing that sits above it that people can really buy into, they can really believe in, and that's your customers, your employees, your supply partners, your investors, shareholders, whoever it is, something people can really buy into. My fourth point is, you mentioned it earlier, Steph, be brave. Everyone, I think, agrees with the challenges we face. We need brave people to innovate and to find new and exciting ways of doing things, just like you guys have. So, you know, that is a really important area. And my final point, collaborate, collaborate, collaborate. This can be quite a lonely area. You may be doing things differently in an industry, and you know, people don't quite understand what you're doing yet. You might be in an organization that hasn't quite caught up. Look out, seek out like-minded people and feed off their enthusiasm and their creativity. Because I think with a challenge this big, it's about all of us working together. It's about kind of reaching out to people like James and Steph and Jarvis and Sara and saying, if we work on this together, then, you know, that's the way we can potentially crack it. So that's my 2 penneth on it. And I think actually, Tim, you might have a poll to throw in at this point.
Let me launch that poll. So you should all see that on your screen now. So if you just want to take a second to answer honestly. Hopefully everybody can see that. Oh, we have some answers coming in. And when everyone has answered, we will share the results.
Sara, thank you so much for those 3 points. Something we'll talk about later in the Q&A. I think really exciting to think about actually that employees have a choice of the companies they want to work for, and the power of the employee, I think, is a really, really exciting one to harness. Tim, do we have some poll results?
We do. We have 80% of people who have voted, so that will give us enough. So these are the results of the poll.
So how would you describe your company's current approach to sustainability and ethical behavior? And actually overall, 42% say it is taken seriously, but we have a long way to go. So well done for being here and taking the time to connect today, because this is all part of the journey that we're on together. All right, fantastic. Now, Mr. Jarvis Smith, over to you.
Thank you very much. Happy Earth Day, everybody. So I'm going to talk about changing consumer trends, and what qualifies me to speak about this. Well, I'm a shopper myself, so aren't we all? But actually, Steph and Tim mentioned earlier that I was on a TV show called Dumped, which was a Channel 4 show where we had to live on a landfill. We were dumped there with nothing. We basically had to build somewhere to sleep, shit and shower, and cook food and everything else from other people's waste. So this was in 2006. And I had a bit of an epiphany moment, because this was the dark side of consumerism. It was the opposite end to any high street in the UK. And the epiphany moment was simply, it gave me a purpose, was that one day a refuge truck came to the site in our 3rd week of living there and dumped its rubbish, and we had to siphon through it and decide what could be recycled and what couldn't. And after about 20 minutes of doing this, I felt physically, toxically sick, like really ill, like the worst hangover ever. And so I laid on the ground, and I had a bit of training in shamanic principles and Reiki and yoga and things like that. And I started to release this energy into the earth, and let go, let go, let go, and started to breathe in from the earth to be replenished. And as I did that, I got this very clear, audible message saying, "This is what you are doing to me." And it's like, whoa, my God, it was such a wake-up call. So basically, I was showing that, you know, we were damaging the earth was sick, and we needed to do something to fix her. So on Earth Day, I'd really like to honour that process, because it gave me a purpose. And the purpose that I now live today led me to go on and do some extraordinary things. So I went back to the company that I was working with. At the time, I was in advertising, creating advertising campaigns in print, in national newspapers for brands. And I said to the publishers, I want to launch a lifestyle magazine, but purely about ethical lifestyle. And at the time, there were the obvious brands like Economies and Patagonia, but very few brands, actually. This is in 2007. And so after about 6 months of working on this, we realized we had a good business model. And then the publishers tried to rip me off a bit. So I went to another publishers and I thought, well, who's the biggest publishers on the planet? It was National Geographic. So they allowed me to launch National Geographic Green, which is actually the world's biggest ever ethical lifestyle magazine. And that's evolved now to what I do today, which is run a business called My Green Pod. So I still publish a magazine with The Guardian, which is a quarterly supplement. We have a website, but essentially we've watched the consumer trends evolve over the last 10 years. So it does qualify me to basically share some of the insights that I'm going to share with you now. And these are that, firstly, there are 90%, through reports and research that's been done of late, 90% of consumers in this country want to change their consumer habits, but only 10% of them have actually acted. So why is that? It's because they are lost. They don't know where to turn. They don't know what to do. They don't know who to trust. You know, there's a whole list of situations. But one of the big things that we have noticed is that over the last 10 years, since 1999, ethical consumption in terms of spend has gone from £1 billion to 41 billion pounds in 10 years. So that is huge. And, you know, the biggest rise actually is in ethical food and drink. I think it went, in fact, I tell a lie, it went from 11 billion to 41 billion over 10 years. And in ethical food and drink, it's gone from 1 billion to 11 billion. So that's a massive increase. Now, in that time also, consumers have boycotted brands that are fairly, they've been fairly loyal to, because they don't have the sustainable or ethical ethics that these consumers want. And that has come to the amount of late of £4 billion that people are boycotting from brands that they would traditionally have bought products from. So we're seeing a massive rise in the way that people shop. Now, the problem that we have is that we're calling everybody ethical or conscious consumers, but actually that's a labeling that is really shit, because we're not actually consumers, we're human beings. And the issue is that back in 1955, there was a very wise economist that basically did a lot of research on how to, post the war, how to create a sustainable financial economy. And I just want to quote or kind of paraphrase the information that he kind of pushed out into a system that we now still live today. And it's this: our enormously productive economy demands that we make consumption our way of life, that we convert the buying and use of goods into rituals, that we seek our spiritual satisfaction, our ego satisfaction in consumption. We need things consumed, burned up, replaced, and discarded at an ever accelerating rate. That is the world economy's mantra. So the first thing we need to do is delabelize ourselves as consumers, and actually, I think, relabel ourselves as conscious citizens or planetary custodians, which is perhaps an even more apt moment in time that we have, particularly with the fact that we're all locked away because of a pandemic that is created ultimately because we've disrespected and lost touch with nature. So there is some good news that, you know, this time that we're in at the moment is actually showing the citizen of our time that actually our impact, or the lessening of our impact, is helping nature to come back, is helping nature to re-establish itself in a crazy, crazy world that we live in. So dolphins have come back to Italy, and, you know, we're hearing much more bird song around, and, you know, just some amazing things. But this is basically because the lessening use of fossil fuels, and ultimately our whole economy is built on the fossil fuel industry. So there were some really positive other facts that I'd just quite like to bring into this, is that 90% of people, through a JWT report, it's the new Sustainability Generation report, was 90% of people feel that companies and brands have a responsibility to take care of the planet and its people, right? 91% of people think that companies and brands that pollute the environment should be fined. So we're beginning to see that trend with ecocide and various other laws that are coming in. 86% of people believe that there's not enough information on products for consumers to assess how sustainable they are. 70% would be willing to pay more for products and services if they protect the environment or don't infringe on human rights, but they're not happy about that because it should really be a given. So, clearly there is a big problem, but what I think is fascinating about this is that, we're in a consciousness at the moment, a mass consciousness of purpose. The big banks are coming out, NatWest and people like that are coming out saying, we're now all about purpose, we're climate business. And actually, a lot of it is greenwash. And we saw greenwash heavily a good few years ago. And what we're now seeing again is the second phase of greenwash. And what I love about that is that consciousness has evolved in citizens so beautifully because of information and the wisdom of the youngsters that are coming in and the astrological time that we're in. And, there's so many variables that contribute to this. But the awesome thing about businesses that say, and I'll give you an example, I don't know, Nike, they've created actually it's probably not a great example, but let's just say a trainer company that have created this shoe out of recycled plastic materials, and it's one shoe out of 10,000 shoes, right? So they think it's a good thing, or a water bottle company are donating £100,000 to a community to get better water. So we all know that that's a fraction of their business model. And people are now seeing through this, and actually the very marketing campaign that is supposed to stimulate positivity for that brand is actually killing them, which is great. They're actually promoting their own demise, which is just really brilliant. So whenever we see greenwash, be conscious enough to kind of go, actually, yeah, that's a message for me not to use that company or buy from that brand anymore. And I'll go and research who I can look for. But I think I want to bring this back ultimately to your industry, Steph and Tim, because there were some obvious trends in the drinks world. And I genuinely had to do a little bit of research on this, on the alcohol side of drinks, because there isn't actually that much information out there. So I think what you guys are doing in terms of pioneering and leading the way is amazing. So these are the trends that I've kind of seen that are very much in comparison with the way that the citizens that shop with us and connect with us are kind of evolving. And these are, looking at ideas around plant-based and vegan products. That's an obvious one. There's a massive growth in veganism and plant-based citizens. Organic as opposed to GM, because that's vitally important. Ingredients that there's no nasties, no pesticides, locally sourced ingredients. I know James is going to perhaps talk a bit more about that. He's the guru on that side. I think products that are made in small batches that, that have a perhaps slightly less of a shelf life, because, people know that they're actually getting, a closer connection to when that product was made. Definitely using less water. I read a statistic that 192 litres are used for 1 pint of beer. I mean, that is just insane. Also that drinks are transported differently with a lower footprint, the packaging, of course. And, there's been a massive wave of people saying no to plastic. And actually, we've already got plastic. We might as well use the plastic that we've got. The issue is that it's not recycled or reusable. So we just need to create systems so we can use the plastic that we've currently got. It's a massive sideshow to say stop using plastic, because if you have to go into making new materials, that will probably have an 80% worse detrimental effect on the environment than actually currently using the plastic that we've got. So, don't be fooled by some sideshows that are going on. I think one of the really important things, and we're really massively noticing this with the way people purchase with us, is brands that are embedding restoration into their product. So what does that mean? It means that if you are taking something from the earth to make your stuff, then put something back. So you're actually taking and putting back. It's an indigenous law. It's a natural law. It's a principle of being human. And we used to live like this before religion and politics and governments got in the way. It was very natural. So, you know, do consider that, you know, nature, if you like, is we have to look after nature. And actually now we have to put nature first, because we've only really got about 10 years to really drastically, dramatically, radically turn things around. And the way we, us, the kind of citizens, have that opportunity is by the way that we consume, by the way that we buy stuff, by the way that we shop. So we can become really conscious about the way that we do that. And I think that, you know, if brands out there are looking at better ways to connect with a conscious citizen, if you can tick, you know, all of those boxes, or at least certainly considered those boxes, then you're actually going to create what is known in the advertising industry as the feel-good factor. Because people want to buy stuff knowing it's healthy for them, it's healthy for the planet, it's healthy for future generations. Therefore, that makes me feel good. That's why veganism has gone astronomically huge in such a short space of time, because people do really care about, you know, things that they haven't considered in the past. So what I want to do, have I got a few minutes left? I'm just a bit lost for time. 2 minutes, something like that? Give me a thumbs up. 2 minutes. Okay.
We'll catch it up.
So what I want to do very quickly is just ask, I want to change gear, right? I just want to ask everybody for a second, just to close their eyes. And just take a couple of deep breaths, just to create some stillness within your beingness. And as you're feeling still and connecting with your breath, I'd like you to imagine taking yourself to the best place that you know on this planet. The place that makes you feel the best, the most joyful, the most blissful, the happiest place that you can possibly find within your mind's eye. And just get a sense of how that place feels to you. Yeah, does it bring a smile to your face? Does it warm your heart? So I do believe that we're moving into a much more holistic world, a much more kind of spiritual world. So when you're ready, close your eyes and come back out of that. And I can pretty much guarantee that none of you in that process of taking yourself to the best place will have been shopping. Please send us a chat if anybody was shopping in that moment. Now, having changed gear, here's what I think is going to be, and I was a pioneer in this sector in terms of conscious shopping. I think this is what the next 10 years are going to look like. I think the next 10 years are going to be about us reconnecting with nature. They're going to be about us really considering how we collaborate with nature. So Sara talked about collaboration in business, but let's not forget nature. Every single thing that we eat, that we are, that we live in, that we drive in, everything comes from nature. How have we lost contact with nature? And it's because that statement that I talked about earlier, that kind of guru that created this financial sustainable economy, basically took nature out of the equation. Because if we really truly connect with nature and realize that actually it supplies everything for us, we would naturally take care of it. So that's the thing I think is going to happen, and evolution is going to occur, is that people are going to reconnect with nature in a much more wholesome way. It's happening at this very moment. We're at a pivotal moment in time. We couldn't have asked for a better outcome than we've got at the moment. I know people are ill and dying, but actually this is nothing in comparison to what is going to be on our doorstep within the next 10 to 15 to 20 years if we continue down this business as usual way, which clearly we're not going to be. Everybody is saying we're never going to be the same again after this situation. So there's a couple of recommendations, quick ones that I'd like to recommend to you. There's an app out there called Geeky, which basically shows you any product. I think there's about 350,000 FMCGs in the app. It'll tell you what its supply chain, whether it's whether it's an ethical product, and it will tick your boxes as to how you consume things. So definitely download Geeky. And also, if you want to shop somewhere that you know somebody's taken time and consideration in creating an ethical, conscious marketplace, it's My Green Pod. So a bit of self-promotion there. And we are giving a 20% discount, which I'll ask Tim and Stephanie to send out to everybody that's on the call, so that you can shop, buy some organic wine for 20% off. I mean, you can't get better than that. Anyway, that's enough from me. Thank you very much. I hope it's
Thank you,
been a little
Jarvis.
bit interesting.
No, that was fantastically powerful and very moving, and I
Sure.
think probably touched a lot of us. I think we have a poll from you as well that Tim's going to launch.
Yes, we do. We have a poll.
Ooh, how exciting. So do you believe drinks companies should have a positive impact upon the environment? I think we know the answer to this one.
It'd be surprising for any other answer to appear, but let's see what the conclusion was, Tim. Fantastic. Good stuff. Well, it's good to know that we're all on the same page, and I think probably sharing a lot of positive energy amongst ourselves. Brilliant. So again, thank you so much, Jarvis. Moving on to Sara Vashon, who's going to respond, I think, on one of Jarvis's comments around actually how can we trust these eco-friendly companies and how maybe technology can be useful in that sense. Sara?
Sure. Well, yeah, so I'm Sara, and like we said at the start, I head up marketing for Provenance.org. I am going to move my notes here so I can actually read them because I timed this so I could fit it into 10 minutes, and I am quite a rambler, so I want to keep it constrained. Yeah, so we're a platform and consultancy for transparency, and we use tech to power the stories, the journey, and the impact behind the things that we buy. We do this through a range of digital activations, which I know we'll kind of share some of the things that Avallen has done here in a bit. But this can be digital passports that you can scan or tap on products and see it on your phone whenever you're shopping, to actually things that are embedded in your online store or in online retailers. So people can kind of click through and not only see what you're claiming, but see the proof behind that and anyone who's verified it. And so this is to really show the true provenance of your product. We're probably most famous for our use of blockchain and open data. So we use a lot of tech, really, really advanced tech to ensure that what you're saying is true and we're pulling in the right information, so it's not just you saying it. So for brands, whenever we're consulting with them and working on our platform, it's about well, yeah, getting them to transparency and preventing greenwashing. Like Jarvis was mentioning, that's a huge problem. And for citizens, we're here to empower better and more purposeful purchases. We, as I'm sure everyone on this panel completely feels the same, that every pound, euro, dollar that you spend is a vote that you're casting for the world that you want to live in. So we do have a lot of power as consumers to make those decisions. So I'm going to try to get this in 3 points about what we think transparency looks like. All 3 of them are what you really need to be your most authentic self as a brand. So this starts with brand purpose, which Sarah Duncan spoke a lot about. So there's brand purpose, then we go to product impact and transparency, and then finally proof. So I'll walk through each one of these quickly. And I will probably keep referencing product, like what your product is sold, but this is also for our hospitality friends in the industry. Your product is your business, and as people who are serving up the resources of the earth on a daily basis, you have a huge role to play from your suppliers and what you put on the menu. So you are also involved in this. There's a really great, I know we've thrown a lot of stats here, and here comes more. So there's a really great a report from the Consumer Goods Forum called The Honest Report that I recommend a lot of you look into. It's just really inspiring, great case studies. And they said that 94% of consumers, citizens as we are likely to be loyal to a brand that offers complete transparency. So most of us, particularly the millennials and certainly Gen Zs, they already know that transparency is the expectation of a business. So going into the points of brand purpose. So this starts with your brand purpose. So this is about the why. This is, what does this mean? This is like when you're communicating your values and beliefs to your customers. Sarah spoke on this earlier. Sara Duncan spoke on this earlier. So as citizens here, we're asking, does this brand align with my values? And according to Nielsen, 75% of millennials are likely to make changes to their habits to benefit the environment. What's crazy is that is up from 34% of their baby boomer parents. So like this is a generation that's just completely gone another direction from how their parents shopped, which is really exciting. So how you open up about your mission and your purpose is really key here. So it's not about the what is your product, this is the why. It's why it's made, why you chose this. So what's positive in this space? I'm going to shout out some drinks brands here, give some nice examples of people that I like. So Toast Ale, I'm sure a lot of us have heard of them. They have created a whole brand around their around a cause, which is food waste. And so they are, I looked on their site recently, it said they're saving something like 165,000 meters of land has been saved because they're using wasted materials to create their spirit, their beer, sorry, drinks people, gotta get it accurate. One Hope, they're a great brand based out of Napa Valley. So they have built a brand on their commitments to charities. So they have these cause entrepreneurs who raise money through tasting events. There's things like the Grateful Club, where customers can donate 10% of how much they spend on their products annually into a nonprofit of their choice. So this is really exciting to see. Yes, like Jarvis was saying, there's not a lot of brands, certainly not like Avallen, that go as far as they do, but there's some brands that are, you know, kind of uniting under their purpose. So the next step is the product impact and transparency, this point. So this is all about disclosure. And this is where people slip off, because this is about measuring and disclosing the details about your product and the impact, so your customers know that. So as a citizen, this is where we're like, what am I actually buying and what impact does it have? 70% of people are most interested in the transparency about the products rather than the business. So while we said that brand purpose is really important, this has to trickle down to a product level, or there's just a disconnect, and then you're just like throwing money at charity for no tie. There's a recent Mintel report that said that consumers, again citizens, are redefining value through the lens of the impact their purchases have on the world. So this is the new consumer. They are making decisions because you have to know that, like, the impact of what you buy is also your personal impact on the world. So yeah, Provenance, one of the things we kind of do to guide people, big and small brands, really through their impact and the transparency, is we have something called the transparency framework, which is an open source. You can actually, I'm happy to share a link after, you can go in and kind of just look at it yourself as a business. Open source, for a total tech company in that way. But we benchmark this to international standards, and everything is verifiable. So this means as you go through and you want to make claims, like your marketing claims, you are making sure that there's the right evidence to back that up. So you have the questions to ask your suppliers. Your supplier says they're manufacturing this fair pay. Okay, here's the documentation that you're going to need to prove that, which is really important. And this can all be managed through the platform. So this, again, when we're talking about transparency of products, this is not just what you've left out of your product. This is also, so it's not just the free from movement. This is also about why you've chosen specific ingredients in the first place, which I know, talking to Tim at the start about like why a Calvados, it was like there was a reason they chose apple. There was a reason that they thought that this was the most sustainable spirit-based spirits they could work with. And so, yeah, it's really important to know the why you've chosen your ingredients. And that could be efficacy, it could be flavor, or it could be more social and environmental. So who's positive in this space? From a transparency side, I'm going to give a little shout out to Smooth Ambler and their sourcing. Many of us know in the drinks world that where the liquid actually comes from is often quite murky. People just buy in and slap their label on it, and they don't really tell you where they sourced things from. And so I really applaud Smooth Ambler for their total honesty and no BS approach. If you know John Little, their distiller, he's talked a lot about how they created a whole program really about sourcing. It's called Old Scout, so it's kind of playing to the name. They scouted it out, Old Scout, and saying where they've actually got that liquid. And I know this is something that you do at Avallen as well, which is really exciting to celebrate the makers of your spirit. From an impact perspective, small beer. So I've actually only come across them in the past year, although they are a new business. So Small Beer is London's first B Corp brewery. And so in order to be a B Corp, they've done a lot of assessment. We had to do the same thing at Provenance. There's a lot that you have to even do to get to that point. But they've done so many things, much like Avallen, that were so purposeful and so thoughtful and sustainably minded from the get-go. And their focus, their brand purpose, they kind of united this their impact and brand purpose around water and their water usage. So Jarvis, I think you're mentioning like a crazy stat around how much water is wasted for beer. They tend to quote that it's 10 pints of water for every pint of beer, and they've knocked this down to 1.5 pints of water for 1 pint of beer, which is insane. Like no one else is doing this in the beer space, and it's a model that I think, in the spirit of inspiring others in the industry, these are sorts of trends that we need to like share around. And then, so finally, the final step in transparency to get to your authentic self as a brand is around proof. So this is all about integrity. This is about communicating your practices and your performance clearly to experts, to third parties, to get guidance, but also for the verification that you're doing it correctly. And so then you can share this to your customers. This is how you get around greenwashing. Like someone else checks it out for you and verifies that it's correct. So this is also, it's impact that needs to be assessed over time, but this is not a one-off marketing campaign. This is something that needs to be done consistently. This is, again, tied into your brand purpose, tied into how you're selling your products. People need to know that this is like, at this point, citizens are asking, like, how do I know this is true? And this is where you need to prove it. So they really want to see evidence. And this is, I think, the next step. So we've talked about purpose, then people move into transparency, but the next frontier is proof. Like, people don't trust you. Some small brands can kind of get away with it because they're born good, but at some point someone's going to kind of tear away at that armor, and you're going to need to show evidence of your actions and not just your advertising. So who I think is kind of positive in this space. So Pernod Ricard is an interesting one, and I've put them in here because I've been reading about them a lot lately, because later today, actually, Tim is on a Provenance talk where we're talking about biodiversity at 5 p.m. And they're massive. So this means that change is really hard, but the results of those changes can be, they can really move the dial. They've brought in some great partners, and they've created a sustainability roadmap aligned with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. These massive drinks groups like this, I mean, they're sitting on 250,000 hectares of land to support their portfolio of spirits. And, you know, whatever you want to say about what they've done in the past, they're lining up commitments to biodiversity and regenerative agriculture to nurture terroir, which is their campaign. And while I haven't seen any proof yet, and I'm very excited to see this proof, I think it's very exciting and inspiring that they are at least taking these initiatives, and they've brought in the right partners. So I think that they're going to make some decent progress. And from a proof side, I think actually Avallen, I couldn't find another drinks brand that is more, and I looked because obviously this whole talk is about you and we're all here to support you, but I was trying to find someone that kind of came close from a proof and integrity side. Yeah, I just challenge, I'd love to hear brands that are fully transparent about the processes, doing things like, I mean, Avallen has put their lab report up on, you know, through the Provenance platform on blockchain. They've committed this to eternity, and it's open for everyone to see, to back up their ingredient statement. So you know they haven't added anything dodgy into the mix. Most drinks brands don't even tell you, like they don't even list their ingredients, much less prove it. And so, and I know we're talking about some other work with y'all around carbon and other initiatives. So I think every time you're wanting to do a campaign and make a marketing statement to, you know, help build your brand, you're also finding a way to actually do that action and make sure it's verified and it's true and it's measured. Yeah, so I think just by going beyond transparency with Provenance to prove that authenticity of what you're saying, that that openness really adds a layer of it's like the lens of credibility to everything that you do. So yeah, just to wrap up, the most authentic, the path to being your most authentic self as a brand and being as transparent as you can be. This starts with brand purpose, which is answering the why, your product and impact transparency, which is disclosing honestly, and proof, which is raising the bar with integrity. So happy World Earth Day, and thank you so much, Avallen, for giving us this platform to talk about all the things we love.
Great, thanks, Sarah. I think we have a little something for people to do as well, don't we?
Oh, yes. Well, if you want to see how Avallen have become transparent, you can actually take out your phone, and if you open your camera app and you hold it over the QR, if you're in a modern phone that doesn't have weird settings, I'm just on an old iPhone 8, the default is that it opens up this lovely, passport, yeah, which you can see. You can click and see the ABCs of Avallen, but you can also see a little bit about their product proof points. So things like locally sourced, supports biodiversity, no sugar added, and the journey. And this is one of the things that we offer these activations. And yeah, obviously the aim is that at some point every product has this sort of information attached to it digitally or in some format. But yeah, I think y'all are really pioneering this transparency with integrity.
Thank you, thank you. And we have a poll as well, so I'm going to launch that now.
Yeah, this is kind of for the business people. And we're all business people, aren't we? This is to find out what is that barrier, like what's kind of holding you back from being transparent. And I've sat in a lot of businesses where that's touched every one of these or all of them.
Thank you so much, Sarah. It's really insightful, and I think quite interesting that again you've done a bit of research into who is doing it well, and it's really nice to give those people recognition, and especially Pernod Ricard calling out the big guys is just, and if not more important than all the little guys trying to do their thing, because they are the ones that are truly going to be able to deliver change at scale. And I think Tim and I agree. We've been really, really impressed by their initiatives, and we've spoken with their VP of Sustainability, Vanessa Wright. And being terroir driven and being French in that respect around agriculture and actually quality of produce, I think says a lot to biodiversity in the future of the drinks industry.
Definitely. And what brands, like small brands, especially people, challenger brands, as I called Tim, I've said y'all are disruptor and challenger brands. You are inspiring. I mean, they're watching you, like they're watching some of these small brands as well. So I think it's quite a circle of the big brands are pushing massive change, but you keep raising the bar. And so they have to keep up. And even though they're big and it takes longer, like they're trying to do the right thing.
And it's 100% the idea of what we want to do. It's inspiring each other collectively to be better, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can we publish the results, Tim?
Sure, we can end the polling, and there we go.
So what is your greatest barrier to communicating on more transparency? Okay. Ultimately, commercially sensitive info.
Yeah. This is something that actually we're using tech. We see this a lot in fashion. My gosh, fashion is so competitive. And especially we've just moved into beauty as well. There is a way through technology, through things like blockchain and emerging tech, to actually confirm that something is true without showing the details. And so I think that's kind of the next step as we work with bigger companies, especially that they're quite concerned about. And that's the journey that we're on.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Sarah. Okay, now moving from technology side, let's go into the kind of more creative, yummy foodie drink side with Mr. James.
Good afternoon, everyone. Happy Earth Day. My name's James. I've got a restaurant down in Bournemouth where I'm based called Terroir Tapas. A few years ago, I've also got another restaurant as well, but I wanted to open another venue on the high street, and I just kind of felt that responsibility to, when opening a new venue, create a kind of space that was as eco-friendly as possible, really. And that's how we created Terroir. We've been Class Bar winner for the last 2 years for like sustainability, which has been absolutely fantastic for us. I'm going to talk a few bits about sourcing ingredients and kind of what we do there, essentially. I'm going to start with, quite interestingly, in the industry recently, we've been hearing a lot from people saying that there's a lack of skill in the industry. Like I hear from chefs, there's not that many chefs around these days. As people leave the industry, because it's a hard industry as it is. But then, you know, for me, opening and kind of more eco-friendly venue, there's not a lot of skill that actually makes, well, you don't need a lot of skill to make a positive change within your business. And it's all about embracing your team. I was going to say, Sarah, I've just bought your book. It's actually just arrived. I got a notification. It's arrived at work this afternoon. And I think it is really simple just to engage your team to make a positive change and then pass that on to the consumer. And that's really what the whole Terroir project's been about for me. I just want to say firstly, thank you to Avallen. I think Avallen are a perfect example of a great product. It tastes super tasty firstly, which is really important from a bartender's point of view. And so it's a perfect combination of you know, a real ethical product combined with probably more Tim's side of the business, but kind of being like the looking after industry health as well, which I think was that the whole sustainability package needs to include everything. Positivity can't just be about product; it needs to be about the kind of the whole health of a business as well. So congratulations to you guys on that. Yeah. So yeah. Also, thank you to, I said, Sarah and her book, and. So this that was Sarah about Provenance, and Provenance has been a massive thing for me from when I started my first restaurant, which is the Larder House, which is I class it as a rustic European restaurant, and we used to do a Provenance all the time when we're talking about what we do there at the restaurant. But it's kind of like that identity and that love for ingredients, and it's a European restaurant, but I think more so in Europe than what we see in the UK is kind of that love for ingredients and that passion for the actual product. I absolutely love it when you go to little towns in Spain and someone's making something like maybe like a romesco sauce, and someone makes it in that town, and then the next town along apparently make it better. They do their own twists on things, you know, and it's that kind of provenance and that link to food, and they've got so much passion around their ingredients. I really wish we could apply back to the UK. We see it in certain examples, but I think it's something that's really encouraging, and think that's one thing we do at Terroir is really focusing on what's local, what's seasonal, what tastes best right now. I've kind of made a little drink this afternoon, obviously using Avallen. I've got some tonic water, some Manzanilla sherry to kind of really get that kind of fresh notes with it. And I've actually, well, I've eaten the asparagus already, but I kind of infused some asparagus, and the field's about 100 meters over there where the asparagus is picked. But it's just a really fresh, kind of nice, crisp bite drink, and a perfect little spritz for this occasion. So, cheers to everyone. So yeah, then talking about how we can actually really think about ingredients. I think the whole thing from a bar perspective is actually really understanding what you want in terms of flavors, and kind of breaking down those flavors, especially. Not so much a drink example, but as with my chefs this morning, we're trying to create new dishes for our takeaway options that we're doing at the restaurant. We're trying to do like funky, like cool, really fresh salads for the summer. So rather than you're using all the byproducts from the local farm here, it's all the bendy, all the wonky asparagus, and we've made like an asparagus guacamole essentially, and it tastes super great. Perfect for what we're kind of doing. But I think it's that real understanding of flavour and actually what you want from drinks is what we really need to consider behind the bar. It's all a balance. A balanced drink has different, you've got acidity, you've got sweetness, but you can actually get these things if you really specific on what you're using and harvesting things at the right times, or maybe letting things over ripen. Things like bananas, a ripe banana or green banana is completely different to like a brown banana, isn't it? And it's using those kind of that appreciation of flavour, especially the way we source direct from the farm. So gooseberries, we might take them at the later stage or the earlier stage, and that's kind of one key thing for me is actually knowing what you want from the drink. We don't think we can kind of get exotic flavours from where we are in the UK, but we really can. You can really take specific notes from using products at the exact time, which is fantastic. I just want to talk about engaging with local businesses as well, and actually kind of looking around your local high streets and like the independents and seeing what they can kind of source some different products. So, we've got, there's beehives just across the field from me as well. But every little shop has its own little kind of, I think it's that integrity and it's that closeness where you can really kind of create something totally unique for your business. Using something local and something specific to actually what you're trying to create. And then honesty of products is something that is really always been in the back of my mind. I guess sustainability and that whole kind of, trying to think of the word Jarvis used about green, I've got it down somewhere, greenwashing. It's been a big bar of mine for ages because it's such a great used word. We're sustainable, we do all these things, and you kind of really look at it and go, guys, you really aren't. You kind of, you're just like washing around the subject. So being really honest, it's been quite tricky with us at Terroir. We've been there for 2 years, and we're not the busiest place. We have great times, obviously, but trying to get people to maybe relax with their kind of their concepts of what you're going out to dine in restaurants. And I completely 100% agree that you go to a restaurant to have a good night out and relax and maybe think about your working life. So you know, it's I've actually got a question that can pop up. I don't know if Tim can do it now. A little poll with regards to there you go. How important is a positive drinking dining experience when you're out? And one thing I've always been conscious about with Terroir is we don't want to be preachy. We don't want you to come into the restaurant and for us to kind of bombard you with what we're doing behind the scenes. We made a conscious note not to do anything for the first year. We didn't even tell people what we're about. We kind of wanted people to kind of just understand the quality level of what we're offering. And I think that's the key stage. Obviously, with all of this, people need a good value for money, which you can hopefully get by sourcing locally and working with your farmers. So yeah, they've got to understand that there's quality there in the first place, and then we can kind of, as people ask questions, because there's a few clues within Terroir why things are a little bit awkward, like I'm trying to think one now, but it's definitely a space where some diners don't feel comfortable because there's not your normal, you know, the menus aren't printed on in front of you. You kind of got to ask, the menu's quite deliberately quite short in terms of description, so people have to ask, what's this, what's that? And you know, our hummus is made from British fava beans rather than using imported chickpeas, and it's all those kind of questions that we really just like try to integrate with the customer, so they have a little bit more understanding about what the whole project's about. Then obviously down with the what we do is like really try to inspire a lifestyle with what we do at Terroir. So engaging with the team is obviously the most important thing. So I'm taking the team out to the farms, and we can really see how ingredients grow. But then kind of putting that forward to the customers as well. I've actually just opened a shop come December time where you can actually buy all the products that you can use within Terroir, which is really promising. So people can buy all the, you know, like the British grown pulses and beans. And it's not just sharing our methodology and how we make things. So how we make our own fermentations of flavors. I mean, I think a clear thing with us, like moving forwards as an industry, is to kind of show a bit more clarity and kind of share ideas. A classic cocktail is great. We all have classic cocktails, but they're classic for a reason, because they absolutely work, and we can do our own twists on them, but we can apply local ingredients to them, and we can really inspire everyone. I mean, the gin movement in the industry has been huge over the last few years, but now if we can really encourage people to look at what they've got around them, even at home, if they've got an allotment or a growing patch in the garden, so maybe, you know, there's ways and means that we can preserve these flavors and actually make super tasty drinks at home. And then, you know, we want to be the forefront of it at the bar and the restaurant, and kind of we'll show people these flavors. But a lot of it is simplicity, and it's kind of going back to that pre-industrialized kind of processing. So it's all really exciting. Yeah.
Amazing. I think everyone's just desperate to come and have dinner at Terroir Tapas now.
Yeah, hopefully.
So when you reopen, please expect a surge. No, it's really some stunning things there to think about and consider. And I think looking at the results of the poll, James, people probably think a little bit more about what they're eating, where they're eating it. I'm not sure that's trickled down yet into drinking culture. And I know Tim and I have definitely had pushback from a few people that we've spoken to, that people actually care about these things when they're going for drinks and they just want to have fun. But it will get there. And well done for leading the way. Yeah,
we've done a few things. We've all of our dishes, and we're about to do it with the drinks. We've got, like, I know, the classic food miles, but we break down every drink into, like, literally how far every ingredient within that drink goes. So you can kind of look on our drinks list, and maybe that one's got 5 kilometers in terms of the ingredients. We've got a local distiller, which really helps. We kind of do move the alcohol thing is a little bit tricky. But luckily for us, Normandy is closer than a lot of places in the UK for us down south. So you guys win on that one. But I think, again, it's just showing that clarity. And I think what Sarah's doing with Provenance is absolutely amazing. And I think that's to actually, if I could prove everything, for me, that's like an absolute win, because I think it's that struggle to, there is so much BS around in the industry, unfortunately. So yeah, congratulations to Sarah on that business. I'm going to look into it a lot more.
Amazing. Good. Well, this is the whole point of the session, is that we all find ways and means to up our game and do the best that we can. All right, so now our last panelist of the day is our very own Mr. TEJ. He's going to talk to us a little bit about From Blossom to Barton.
They normally say save the best till last, but this is definitely not the case this time.
Be positive, my dear.
Thank you. Well, firstly, thank you everyone for coming to join our seminar today. I know these are difficult times, and webinars are the new thing, so I really appreciate you taking some time out of your day to join us. And thank you to our speakers as well. You guys have been incredible. And we've heard some great presentations about ethical business, the changing of the citizen trends, the need for importance and transparency in our industry, and the exciting future of local and reduced waste ingredients. And I'm going to finish up talking about the environmental footprint of alcohol production and alcohol brands, from the fields to the bar, or perhaps that would be better as the home bar these days. So alcohol, except for only one brand that I know of, and that's Air Vodka, which is made from extracting carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, is an agricultural and an industrial product. Starts in the fields, then goes into an industrial process, and it's the biggest environmental impact comes from the agriculture. If we factor in biodiversity loss, the amount of water used, carbon emissions, and pesticide and fertilizer use, just to name 4 metrics. Most of our alcohol, both for consumption and for industrial processes, uses grain as a raw material. And Pernod Ricard, as Sarah mentioned recently, have come out and say that they use 250,000 hectares of land and 2.5 million tons of grain just to make their alcohol. And this is modern farming practice of monoculture, where you grow one crop over a huge area of land to the expense of biodiversity that's caused this enormous loss. So I've personally been to the cornfields in the middle of the US, and you can stand on the side of the road and see nothing but corn in every direction. And it's this loss of biodiversity, the increased carbon emissions, and increased pesticide and fertilizer use, which is polluting our water sources, our oceans, leaching into our food chains. That is part of the problem, this monoculture. But we can make improvements here. We can look at better farming management and practices, which protects a certain level of biodiversity. We can be better at our water consumption, so reducing the amount of water waste, because there's a lot of waste in the industry, and also switching to organic production, or production which is lower in pesticide and fertilizer use. But the easiest and most impactful switch, however, is to change the raw material itself. We were lucky enough at Avallen to start from scratch and choose our raw material, so it's a bit more difficult if you are a whiskey brand. You cannot move away from grain. But for new brands coming into the market, maybe starting at looking at the raw material is the best way if you want to create a brand that kind of has a very small environmental footprint. Production. So once we've kind of come away from the fields, we move away from an agricultural process and into an industrial process when we get into the production. So it's the processing of the raw materials at a distillery. So certain raw materials such as grains and agave require considerable processing to take them from their raw material into an alcohol. So for grain, for example, it has to be malted, it has to be mashed. With agave, you have to cook the agaves in an autoclave if you're making tequila, or roast them if you're making agaves. So there's a lot of processes here, and each one of those processes is going to add to the environmental impact because you're using increasing amounts of water and energy into that process. But there are great gains to be made here, both environmentally and financially, through increased efficiencies in water use. So we're seeing a lot of distilleries now focusing on reducing the amount of water they use, and also recycling that water. So if the water is heated through the distillation process, they can then use it to keep the factory warm or the offices warm. Heat management as well is going to be key. And also renewable energy sources, making sure the distilleries are firing either on natural gas that's made from waste or from renewable electricity sources. And all of these are being pursued and must be pursued if we're to move towards reducing our impact as an industry. And we must also consider the packaging of our liquid. The amount of glass that's used in the bottle. We've seen over the last few years, bottles seem to get heavier and heavier to imply a feeling of luxury in the brand, and that just increases the amount of glass that's used in the bottle, the amount of CO2 that's required to ship the bottles as well. Thankfully, glass is easily recyclable, and most bottles today contain a decent amount of cullet, which is crushed recycled glass, as it's actually cheaper and easier to use for the glass industry than producing glass from raw materials. But also we can look at alternatives to glass, such as we're starting to see kind of more bag-in-box options or metal options, as opposed to just glass. We also look at the inks that we use on our labels, as that's a chemical process, and some are far more toxic than others, such as the kind of shiny metallic inks that you'll see on many bottles these days. Can we consider screen printing over traditional paper labels as a way to reduce the amount of materials that we use as well? Then finally, how can we reduce the number of processes required in our packaging and simplify our packaging down as much as possible? So things like unbleached cardboard, consider paper tape, using single color printing as opposed to multicolor printing. All of these things are going to reduce the impact. Removing single-use plastics like polystyrene packaging and filler in boxes. And moving to maybe cardboard options. There's a great company down in Cornwall called FlexiHex, who are using, they originally created cardboard packaging for surfboards, because the surfers were realizing that they were wrapping their surfboards in plastic, then going out surfing and then just encountering plastic in the oceans. So they thought that there was a much better way to do it. And FlexiHex have now taken that technology and used it to wrap bottles for shipping. Finally, and then we've got the route to market. So this is, once we've got our product, how do we get it to the people who want to drink it? And if we take a little think about this, it's a bit crazy how we do it in the drinks industry. We produce a liquid. We spend a lot of time and energy and effort creating delicious liquids. And we put those liquids in very small bottles, slap a label on that bottle, or maybe 3, stick a cork in the top of it, put 6 or 12 of them in a box, 80 of them on a pallet, ship them around the world. And then once they arrive at their destination, someone takes all those boxes off the pallet. The pallet might actually get reused. And then someone will take the bottles out of the box, throw the box away. They'll pour the liquid out of the bottle, they'll throw the bottle away, they'll throw the cork away, and then do the process all over again. It seems like such a wasteful way to transport what is essentially a very, very small amount of liquid, 70 cls, or if you're in the US, it's 75. But we're beginning to see the sprouts of innovation here in challenging this traditional route to market with reusable containers. Actually making a return. Reusable containers used to be a thing, and now we're starting to see them making a return. So companies like Eco Spirits using their glass and aluminium bulk shipping options. So each one of those vessels is designed to be used 40 to 50 times with local distribution and filling. So you're not sending it back halfway across the world to be refilled. And also, if you look at the way that we've done marketing and events and promotion within the industry, this can also be extremely wasteful. You know, a pop-up for a very short amount of time. And I've personally been to warehouses which are full to the rafters with out-of-date point of sale material just sitting there rotting and wasting away because it's over-ordered. It's not thought, its environmental footprint is not considered at all. So can we find ways that to make our POS not only beneficial to communicating the brand strategy and messaging, but also having a positive impact upon the environment. You know, POS for good rather than just POS for the sake of POS, which I think has been very much the traditional way of looking at it. And also, I think going on from this COVID-19 situation, I'm hoping that we'll see a lessening of bar pop-ups and guest bartending shifts where we fly people around the world to do one shift. And so I think we'll see a lot more localization and supporting the local businesses and the local bartenders a lot more. And then finally, we've got post-consumption. So, you know, once we have made the liquid, we've bottled the liquid, we've shipped the liquid, what happens at the end? So at present, the responsibility, both financially and logistically, for dealing with the waste generated by drinks brands, and includes Avallen, is firmly placed on the shoulders of the bars, the restaurants that sell it. And I'm sure James will know how these run bars and restaurants, how much waste is generated by a typical bar. It's enormous. You know, and we place that responsibility on the shoulders of the bars or restaurants that sell it, or the consumers that drink it, particularly now with everyone drinking at home. So I think it's about time that the industry took greater responsibility for its waste, both in reducing the amount that is generated in the first place, but also helping bars, restaurants, consumers, also citizens, process it through various schemes. So bottle recycling schemes. So me and Stephanie live in Amsterdam, and every supermarket there have bottle recycling schemes where you can take your Heineken beer bottles in, and Heineken pay to have them recycled. Reduction in packaging, and also encouraging reuse of materials where possible. So there's loads and loads of things we can do, right from the field to the bar or to the home bar, to improve the impact of the industry. You know, the industry is extremely nuanced, it's complicated, and extremely wasteful, but I'm really hopeful that on this 50th anniversary of Earth Day, and with everything else that's going on in the world right now, we can come together as an industry and pursue smart and innovative solutions to dramatically reduce our environmental impact. So yeah, that's about all I've got to say on
Amazing.
that.
Thank you, Tim. I think one thing we're all taking away from this is that we are humans and citizens and not consumers, which is fundamental. So we actually have 10 minutes left.
I have a quick poll. I completely forgot about my poll.
Oh, you have
so busy doing everyone else's. So I'm just going to launch my poll quickly. So what would you like to see? What would you like to see drinks companies do more of? You can either select one or multiple answers on that list.
Did you choose a multiple to show off your extreme Zoom skills?
No, I wasn't showing off. I was testing. Just testing.
It's a fantastic question, Tim.
Thanks. Oh, this one's going well. The multiple choice one, you get to see a lot more answers.
And as you're answering this question, or if you've already answered it, if you'd already like to start thinking about what is the one thing you'd like to ask our panelists today, that would be fantastic. Once we end this poll, we'll be taking the questions on the Q&A button that you should have at the bottom right of your screens.
Right, let's end this poll. So here are our results. So equal first place, we would like to see brands eliminate single-use plastics and scrap pointless POS, which is fantastic news.
Couldn't agree more.
Both things that we've done at Avallen. Nurture biodiversity, got a good one. Reduce carbon dioxide emissions, which is fantastic. And then closed circle distribution, and finally go organic.
Amazing.
Yeah. Great. Okay, over to you, Steph.
So, as I said, please, this is your time to ask questions. We have just a few minutes left, but we would love to take at least 1 or 2 questions from the audience. Whilst we wait to receive yours, I will kick one off. Really simple question to the panel. What industries are doing it well, and who should we be looking to for inspiration when considering our industry? And that's an open question. Anyone can take that.
I reckon Sara Vashon's got some thoughts here.
Way to call me out. Yeah, I mean, I think actually it's weird that the drinks industry hasn't, well, y'all are quite separate from what we see in food. Food has had to do a lot of transparency and a lot of monitoring their impact just out of risk mitigation, frankly. So I'd say that food is kind of leading the way with the trends there. It's interesting that fashion, actually, we see a lot of noise in fashion, and there's a lot of talk, but there's much less integrity, I suppose, behind it. But fashion certainly at least talks it, not toxic, they talk it quite a bit more than you see in the drink space.
Brilliant.
Great.
So we got a question from Penny, which is quite similar, specific to lifestyle clothing and electronic companies. Any other thoughts on brands or industries doing it well?
I think you can look at the beauty industries. These up and coming brands are really doing things differently.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, if you look at a brand like Weleda, who's been around for 100 years, their whole business philosophy was based on basically using natural products and working in harmony with nature, and it was a Steiner principle business. And actually, that's the most simplistic way you can actually align your brand with natural ethics or sacred laws, if you like, is really working in harmony with nature. It's a bit like James going to pick, the seasonal, that pivotal moment where that grown product is in its most seasonal, moment. So you get the best from it. So Weleda have been doing that forever with their beauty products.
Great example.
I think
Thank
from
you.
a clothing point of view, one that really stands out for me is Outerknown, which is a company that's been started by a 1,000,000-time world surf champion, Kelly Slater. And they have put sustained environmental impact at the very heart of their business. Some really cool clothes if you're into that kind of more casual style.
Not sparkly jackets, then, Tim.
No, but they source denim from the most sustainable factories in the world. All of their buttons are made from recycled or recovered ocean plastics.
Brilliant.
So they're a really fantastic one. And then Allbirds from a shoe company from New Zealand. I know Jacob's on the call, listening on the call. Massive fan of Allbirds, a company again that puts sustainability at the heart of everything they do.
And an amazing investor called Leonardo DiCaprio.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm going to take a few more questions. I've got a really nice one again about greenwashing. Quick answer maybe on actually, how do we know, or how can we even start to know how good a company really is?
Look for the Provenance label.
I was going to say, are they powered by Provenance?
Are they on Provenance? Are they on My Green Pod?
Yeah,
Use
go ahead,
social
Jarvis.
media, I think, as well.
There's lots of reports out there, actually.
Yeah.
There's loads of information. It's just that it's not made as accessible as, but it's kept away. But if you do your Google research or any other browser, you'll find it.
Yeah, I think there's a few certifications that we can trust as well, such as B Corp. If you see B Corp on there, that's going to be a really good sign.
Soil Association.
Cosmo. Yep.
I also the ethical consumer, I think, is not a bad
great
place to go to. They look at sectors as well and rate people from bad to good on different criteria. So I think that's a really valuable resource, the ethical consumer.
I think
there's sorry, Sarah, go on.
I was just going to say, I think as citizens, also one of the things you can do is, if you have a favorite brand that I know when I started switching over into sustainable brands, there were some that I kind of, I loved in the past, and you want to kind of bring them on your journey with you. And so it's completely fine, to Sarah's point, to get on social and ask them these questions. I ask brands all the time on their Instagrams, much to probably piss off their marketing teams. I'm like, I want to know, where was this made? Was this made in the UK? Can you tell me a bit about the ingredients? What's the natural? I think asking these questions as someone who's going to pay them your hard-earned money for what they're selling is completely valid. And social is a great place to directly communicate with them, not listen to everyone else's noise, but go to them and ask.
And I think just picking up on that, and I think Jarvis will know this very well from his days in advertising, there is circumstances where actually the person on social or somebody in the marketing department has just been handed information and hasn't always challenged it. and they've just taken it and run with it and started to create a campaign out of it. And I think it needs that backlash from the consumer via social and other ways for it to get back up the food chain to challenge the people at the top who are making the claims in the first place.
I think there's another. Can I say just another? There's another layer to this as well. So one of the biggest posts we've ever done that went viral within minutes was when Ecova and Method, who are two quite well-known eco household brands, they got bought out by SC Johnson. And SC Johnson are massive on animal testing. Their overall ethics are really bad. But people didn't know this. So they're still buying Method and Ecova products, but actually the money that they're spending, where your pound is a vote, is actually going to a company that overall doesn't give a damn about people's health. So it's looking at not only the brand itself and the ethics of that brand, but also who owns that brand. And Unilever is another really good example. They're doing some amazing stuff, but 80% of their brands are not good. But there's some that are really good. So that's why I think the artisan and the kind of local community approach and local shopping is going to have a huge growth aspect, because most products are owned, but if you chase it all back, they're all owned by the same investment companies. BlackRock being
follow the money.
Yeah, follow the money. Yeah,
follow the money chain.
Right.
Great insight. So just in terms of time, we've got some people now dropping off, and we were supposed to wrap at 5:30.
4 more questions. Should we finish
There's a few more questions. Yeah, so I just would like to say, for those that can stay on, we will happily stay as long as we can and answer these questions. I appreciate that everyone may have other things to do and other Zoom calls to connect to. So as a quick wrap up, and thank you for those that do need to leave. Again, a very, very happy Earth Day to all of you. Thank you for taking the time to connect, to engage, and hopefully to educate. We do hope that this has been a positive talk and an optimistic one. We have recorded, and we will publish this webinar for you to share with anyone that you think may be interested. And for the meantime, stay well, stay safe, and merci. So moving on, we've got a question from Chris, and I totally understand the sentiment. How do we stop this feeling of basically being totally overwhelmed with the small changes that we can do with such an enormous global problem that is climate change? Sarah Duncan.
I'm just going to go back to one of the points I made earlier, and it's about seeking out people and collaborating, working with people that give a damn about this, because I think it's almost impossible to do alone. It's got to be a collective thing where everybody comes together. We're going to have different standpoints, and there'll be different tensions, and people will have different objectives, but it's only by working together and collaborating with people at all levels that we're going to crack this one. So yeah, keep talking to people.
Brilliant.
I have a very short answer. It's the Gandhian phrase, be the change you want to see in the world. Because, if you do make a massive impact, because you're the one person, and when you start changing the way that you live, people are like, oh, what are they up to over there? And then you start to influence them. You've got to remember, this universe is full of a conscious energy, and that energy is produced by the information that's in it. So once we change the information, the building blocks change, which means the physical reality changes. I mean, this is sacred law. It's the way it works. So we have to live it. And by living it, you'll influence 10, 50, 100, 1,000 people around you. So you are having an impact. That's the really important thing to know. We are at critical mass now. It's already happened. We've just now got to deal with the issues.
Fully agree. Jarvis, you're going to be my personal Buddha from now forward. Okay, a question from Ellie in terms of what are the good sources for statistics to help convince senior business leaders on the commercial value of adopting ethical purpose?
I'm sure we've said some of these in our presentation today, Jarvis. I know you have quite a bit of stats.
And we will be writing a white paper summarising a lot of the conversations of today. So we'll be sure to pull out the ones that you've already mentioned. Is there another one that springs to mind, which has been invaluable to some of Your
Yeah,
businesses?
I mean, the Honest Report is really great for businesses big and small, like I mentioned, but actually Edelman, which is a comms agency, they do a trust barometer every year that's quite good for engaging senior. I see some people nodding on the on the call. You've heard of it. Yeah, it's quite good for engaging senior stakeholders.
Yeah, and there's a couple of Nielsen reports as well that look at the sustainable, the kind of the rise of the sustainable consumer and the amount of money. It's quite staggering. Yeah, I think 85% of people think that companies should have a positive impact upon the environment.
Thank you. Another super question from Liam, I'd love the answer to this, is how do we help the older people, so not the Generation Z, the ones above us all, how do we help convince them that this is an absolute emergency, as we can't wait for everyone else to come of age and start to implement change? It will be too late by then.
I'm a bit inside. I'm a Gen X.
Okay, above.
And I think I've come of age.
Let's think of our parents and above. Those are the ones that, to an extent, are kind of responsible for a lot of what's happened. How do we convince them?
There's
I would
loads
say,
sorry, go.
You go, Jarvis.
No, you started. Ladies first, please.
I was going to say I'm probably the oldest person on the panel.
Bet you're not.
And we'll talk about that later. But I think, yes, there is this wave of kind of millennials and Gen Zs, and a lot of the stats and the stuff is focused on that. But I think it's seeping through. You know, we're parents, grandparents, and there's a lot of positive stuff coming up through that I think is a changing attitudes to some of us older fogies.
I think also,
go on. I was just going to say, I would definitely say living it and being that example. There are so many proven cases of a young adult, suddenly drinking organic milk or some going vegan or whatever the wacky thing is to their parents or grandparents. And then, 6 weeks later, you'll see that organic milk in that parent's fridge. They won't say anything about it, but they'll have just done it. And, you influence people. So we mustn't forget how powerful energy is and your vibration. This whole universe is made up of frequency and vibration. Don't ever forget that. We might feel like we're solid, but we're not.
I'm just going to throw in there just very quickly. The book that I wrote, I wouldn't have written it. I wouldn't have got into the whole area if it weren't for my stepdaughter, who just inspired me, who I learnt so much from. And it was her that set me on my journey.
Always is.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, and I think the Extinction Rebellion protests of last year showed that this is not a generational battle. The number of people in their 70s, 80s, and 90s who are getting arrested and going out protesting. I think it has spread across all generations now.
Fantastic. I hope that answers a little your question, Liam. You're vibrating. Continue to vibrate positively. Okay. A question from James Francois. So James has recently launched a really cool Instagram page called Conscious Drops, and it's all about promoting sort of ethical and conscientious drinks, brands and companies, and trying to consult and support people that want to sort of change their dynamic in this phase.
Nice.
His question is more around how he can actually influence and impact more people above and beyond his Instagram page, which for now doesn't have very many followers. Any thoughts?
Send me a press release. I'll do some promotion for you.
There you go.
I was going to say network. Yep. Find other people, start chatting about it, start sharing your opinions and your thoughts, and eventually you'll be chatting to the right people who will pick it up and want to share it for you, because like I say, there's people who want to share the good stuff.
Yeah, get it into the hands of bartenders that love what you're doing, I think.
Yeah. If you think
it's a good idea.
The way to think about it is, imagine it's like in a bar. The more, if you go into a bar and you stand in the corner and don't talk to anyone, probably no one will talk to you. But if you go into the bar and start talking to everyone, all of a sudden you'll spark up conversations. You'll get to know other people. They'll get to know all about you. So get on social, start talking to people, find out.
also get kicked out for being a weirdo.
No, maybe you will get kicked out for being a weirdo. Just, yeah, don't comment on YouTube videos. That's where the weirdos hang out.
Cat people, all those cat people. I hope that answers your question, James. But again, if we can as well help share the stuff that you're starting to do, we'd be delighted to. And I know you're Amsterdam based, so even more reason. Okay, we're going to wrap up with our last question from an anonymous attendee. How very exciting. But basically the question is, how do you determine which worthy cause to get behind when trying to give something back to the environment as a brand owner, because there are many options out there?
Good question. Good question.
Great question.
Can I throw something in there?
Of course.
I think one of the things that I think when you're looking at who your customers are, I think it's important to find something that you think is going to resonate with them as well, because that becomes then a really powerful union. So I would kind of ask your customers, try and get a sense from your citizens what's important to them, and because then if you can find something that where it marries with what's important to you, then I think that's incredibly powerful. And I would say that also balance, you know, the whole COVID thing has slightly kind of refocused the ethical lens. It's about the environment, it's about the planet, absolutely, but it's also about society and how we treat society. And I think having that balance of things that helps protect our planet over the long term, but also helps us be a better society as well, is important.
Yeah, that's great. And I think speaking from Avallen's point of view, we chose the bees because they link back to our brand, and you know, there's a very strong communication between the apple trees, the pollination, and the apple bees. You know, if we had said, right, we want to support the removal of ocean plastic, again, a great cause, but trying to link that to the apple orchards of Normandy is going to be a bit more difficult.
Can I jump in and say, for me, it's all about going and getting that personal relationship with my suppliers. And I think if I can't see it and I can't actually see the product growing in a field, then I'll question kind of what we're actually putting out to my consumers. So I think it's just getting that kind of that relationship back with your suppliers, so you can actually see them face to face, see it actually growing, see it happening, and that's kind of all the satisfaction I need really to move forwards with.
Great. Yeah. We have to take you to we need to take you to Normandy then, don't we, James?
Sounds
harvest. Good. October harvest.
Yeah.
That's a wrap for our questions. So I think now's a good moment. We've overrun just by 10 minutes, which is pretty good for us, so well done. Panelists, you've been absolutely fantastic, so inspirational. Yeah, just nuggets and nuggets and nuggets of wisdom, and thank you so much for giving us your time. It's been a gift for us, and I hope for our audience. So any last words, Timothy?
I'm just extremely grateful for everyone that came today. It's been amazing. A lot of work going on behind the scenes. This is our very first webinar, but it's been fun. So yeah, stay safe. Thank you very much for coming, and happy Earth Day.
Happy Earth Day.
Well done, Steph.
Positive
thank you, guys.
vibrations, everybody.
Vibes.
I think me and Steph just have one more thing to say. Just go out there and
remember to be positive.
Thank you very much, everyone. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Merci.
Bye-bye.
Bye.